Hi, this is Adam. We're going to go through growth targets in this screencast, which are probably the most complex part of writing an SLO, maybe with the exception of establishing your baseline data. I recommend watching this video. It's about 8 minutes before starting to work through the growth target part of the SLO. Just keep in mind that the Center for Assessment has a different SLO form than we do, so while the concept is the same, you'll see some differences when they reference the form they use in the clip. So growth targets are essentially based on the baseline data that you've already collected, and they are based on your professional judgment and assessment of the baseline data, which hopefully provides that more holistic perspective of each one of your students in your target group. This will establish where they might end the year in correlation with the growth target or growth goal, learning goal that you've established in your SLO. The key part here is that your rubric that you're using to assess all this, your baseline data, and your growth targets are all in a manageable or related structure. So, for example, you might average out your baseline data within a rubric that's based on 4 points, and so your growth target would then show students trying to reach goals of a 1, 2, 3, or 4, based again on the rubric itself and the baseline data that you've established. They should all be related to each other. This is an example of a completed SLO, which has basically an explanation of what their growth target structure looks like in comparison to their baseline data. So you have a simple table set up at the bottom that shows if a student's baseline score was within this range. This would be the growth target for that student, and then, of course, at the end of the year, what their target score would be. This is one way to do it. There's a myriad of different ways to set it up, so don't feel like you're restricted to this particular structure. Just an example of how one teacher did this. So, a couple key things with growth targets. First, every student must have one. Like we mentioned, it's got to be connected to the rubric, which is connected to your baseline data. That just makes it easier to use. There's no rule for what the target needs to be for each of your students, just that they have to have one. Even your high achievers or the students that came in with a pretty sound foundation. So you want to set ambitious goals for them, but not unrealistic goals. And again, there's nothing lost with projecting a student to achieve a level that maybe they don't reach, or on the flip side, maybe projecting too low and the student does much better than anticipated. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Again, it's going to be something that you're going to want to formatively assess over the course of the year. And of course, then, as is the purpose of formative assessment, adjust your instructional strategies and inform the student of their progress so that if they're not on pace to hit that target, those changes can be made to ensure they get back on track. As we've talked about before, the best case is that you're integrating this into the things that you already do. So there should not have to be, although you can do it if you want to, but you should not have to be making new or arbitrary assessments. These should be things that already fit into your practice and that you can, again, formatively assess several times over the course of the period that the SLO is active. And there's a lot of ways to set it up. So as you saw in the video clip from the Center for Assessment, they set that up in a chart format. You can set it up as a simple Excel spreadsheet. So you would have all your baseline data listed out, and then you would average it together, which is what the green column here is showing. Projected expected growth for each student. Again, this is based on the rubric, so however your rubric is set up, that's going to be the measurable change that expected growth will be based on. And then finally, where are they going to end up? The expected score, which of course would be measured by your assessment instrument or your rubric at the conclusion of the SLO period. And again, there's no downside to not hitting or hitting those projected scores, but it will give you some, hopefully, some things to reflect about in terms of your instruction that may or may not be addressed through your individual reflection or potential growth plan for the following year. So that's a quick overview of how growth targets work. Like I said, there's not one way to do it. You just want to make sure, I guess, the most important parts is that every student has a target and that there is a connection across your baseline data, your rubric, and your expected score, that they're all connected, and the numerical system that you're basing those around makes sense across all three of those different components.